Hello, good morning, and welcome to Thoughts and Updates for this week. Here I am, still at home, still in lockdown, as our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has suggested there's a possibility that we're in the middle of a second wave of COVID 19. There's this weekend talks of whether or not we're going to end up in yet another national lockdown. We'll hope that's not going to be the case, but one of the major issues that we're struggling with is gatherings in homes, which are being blamed on the young, which is a little unfair, I think, because the majority of people I've seen out in the street who are not observing social distancing or who are not wearing masks tend to be people of my age and above. Certainly, large groups of school children who are wandering about the town here. Some will, maybe 1 in 40, 1 in 50, will not have a mask on and be a little bit obnoxious with it. But when you have large groups, it's more noticeable sometimes, I think, and feel when you see one person who's not conforming. Whereas I think in the greater populace, it would appear to be almost across the board. Now, COVID 19 is indeed something I think that we're going to have to live with for a period of time until a vaccine arrives. But I think that now we're beginning to see those who are anti the way that we were doing things, that want us to now drop the masks, go out, return to normal, do whatever it is, and just accept that COVID 19 is going to devastate our communities and kill lots of people, are beginning to be a little bit emboldened, because after 67 months of 6 or 7, that's not 67, but after 6 or 7 months of being in some kind of lockdown, there are certainly people who are beginning to feel it's a bit overkill, it's a bit much. Hopefully not. That's not a majority view anytime soon, because gambling with people's lives is not necessarily something that I think is a very positive way forward, and I don't think anybody really does when it all comes down to it. So that's the first thing I've learnt this week, is about our fatigue when it comes to holding firm and doing what we need to do in order to get rid of this virus. And maybe we never will get rid of it, but to minimise it to an extent where we can deal with it, we can manage it, I think is massively important. Second thing I've learnt this week is about the election over in America and Donald J. Trump. For by all the revelations of people coming forward and alleging sexual assault, there are a number of things I think that are very important. First of all is not listening to science and putting the economy and business ahead of people's lives is beginning, I think, to bite, in terms of people understanding, realising that what they've got at the moment is a guy who quite clearly wants to retain the power, not necessarily the office. And the distinction comes when you look at people like Lukashenko in Belarus, who wields both power and the office quite clearly because of the way he styled himself in an old Soviet style of leadership. Lukashenko wants to be able to manage his country the way he wants to, but also believes very much that by being president and having rigged the election and won the election, and now is beginning to round up the opposition leaders, that he represents something greater than just simply the power in his country. And for me, Donald Trump is not quite at that level yet. But I think, as many cartoons are beginning to point out, it's not a hop, skip, or a jump away from that happening. I wrote this week for Inside Report about how I understood that for some people Trump's message is clear and obvious and frankly believable. When you fight stupid, you can't fight it. What Trump has done is he's found the lowest common denominator of a vast number of people within a country. And I've always believed that people vote not always because of what they believe in, but what they can live with, so that they may put to one side certain aspects of a party's set of policies in order to vote for them. Now, I'm prime example of that. I don't believe that the Scottish National Party or the Scottish Government have got education right. It's my bag, it's what I work in, so therefore it's a big thing for me. But the overall thrust of what the Scottish National Party are doing is something I can believe in, whilst also putting that objection and worry to one side until we get independence, and then I can work to see education being brought back to what it should be, or to be delivered in the way it should be. I don't think it's ever really been in the right place. But that whole thing has meant to me that for Trump, what I think has happened is that many of the people who have supported Trump have done so because they believe there is a core message in there that they can agree with, not that they believe in everything he says. It's hard to believe that there are people out here who believe in everything he says, but there are. And yeah, in a democracy, right, to have a legitimate view that they can express in a format that should be acceptable to the rest of their community. But for some, they are vile. Bile is just too much. But Biden can lose this. I don't think that Joe Biden is necessarily the saviour of America, but I do think he is the platform for others. And I think that particularly the people around him, there is depth. There's not a figurehead in the Democrats, but there is depth, which is missing in the Republican Party. But I wonder if what's going to happen in the election is the devastation of the Republican Party, a bit of soul-searching, and then the emergence of somebody who is like a Bush or a Reagan figure, who is able to bring the whole party together, and that is going to be, if Biden wins, the biggest challenge. Now, I've said this before, I think one of two things happens. Trump wins by a slim majority, or it's a landslide for Biden. I know what I hope for. What I worry about is that slim majority. So, this week in terms of writing, what I've been doing is for Ringside Report, I've just finished off some stuff on Charlie and Sonny Edwards and sent it across. I've also been looking at Donald Trump's reaction to the whole forest fire stuff and whether or not he listens to the science, which we know he doesn't. For Scottish Football Supporters Association, I wrote a piece that I'm going to have to go back and re-edit because I was calling for some kind of leadership under the testing regime for COVID-19, and on Friday Neil Doncaster issued it, so I need to acknowledge that he's done something, though it's pretty damn late. And this is for cup competitions, particularly those cup competitions where the Premiership teams test as they're supposed to, but anybody underneath the Premiership does not. And I'm not really getting why not. Also, there's nothing going on in boxing this weekend. It's in the UK. It's very fallow. It's a strange time in September. This is normally the time where things are cranking up. Our August was one of the busiest for decades because of COVID-19 pushing things into August. So September, however, is going to end with a bit of a bang. The Charlo brothers are on next week. The final of the World Boxing Super Series Cruiserweights on next week. Also, the Golden Contract final, O'Hara Davis and Tyrone McKenna, which will be great. Even if it's not, the result is going to be great. Nothing for theatre this week at all. Bit quiet in terms of my Work for Fringe review, but that's going to come back. And my dear Ricky, I have not forgotten the ideas. I have something on paper which I shall send. So it's certainly turning. This is dawn in Scotland. It is a beautiful part of the world, but also one where it's grey and overcast. Summer has deserted us, though we did have a relatively decent summer. Most of it was spent inside a house. So until next week, where who knows, we might be out of this local lockdown in Eastern Bartonshire, the council area in which I reside, and able to go elsewhere and do other things, although I could. But I think there is a symbolism in taking it on the chin and being in your house. So stay safe, people. Follow the rules. Help us all stay safe by so doing. And see you next week. Bye for now.